Hello, hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Garrett Bake, your brother in arms, and welcome to another episode of The Tactical Businessman. Today's topic, well, there's a price to pay. There's always a price to pay. So, as I was thinking this morning about what it was that I was going to share with you, I thought about an instance, something that happened to me while I was working as a police officer. And it's kind of a funny, sad story, but it drives home a point. When I had about a year and a half on, 2 years on, I wanted to associate with police officers who were not like the other ones. Right? They weren't just responding to calls; they were more proactive. They were into hunting down the gang members. They were into finding the drug houses. They were proactive about their careers. And so I found a group of these men, and they were great men. And they said, "Hey, come with us, and we will show you how it is to do what we do, how it is to be, a proactive police officer." And like that was heaven for me. Like I'd always searched after and wanted to be a part of a group like this. So I did. Started to hang out with these guys, and they were showing me tips and tricks, like what you should look for in vehicles, or what you should ask people when you stop them. Like it was like amazing, right? It was school for me all over again. Well, one night they're like, "Hey, we got this drug house over here, and we want to do jumps from that." Now, basically, what that means is there was going to be somebody that was going to be on foot. They were going to be watching the traffic coming to and going from the residence, and then I was going to be the vehicle that was going to stop the traffic and then try and locate the drugs inside of the vehicle. Sounds like a pretty simple task. So they got on foot. There was a couple of them. They got on foot, and I was down the road, probably a half mile, in my patrol car, waiting for them to call off a vehicle that was leaving so I could stop it. Well, it was probably about half an hour that had passed, and I was doing some paperwork in my car, and then the radio starts to light up, and it's one of the guys, and he's like, "Hey, there's a car that's leaving right now. It's an older Mercedes station wagon." I'm like, "An older Mercedes station wagon. All right." He's like, "Gray in color." I'm like, "Got it, gray in color." Sure enough, I'm sitting up around Main Street. Here comes this older Mercedes, gray in color. Like it's late at night. There's really not a lot of cars matching that description. So it comes around. There's a traffic violation, and I get behind it, and I turn my lights on. I proceed to call off on traffic, and the vehicle starts to slow down, turns its brake lights on, starts to slow down, and then takes off. Boom, he's going. I'm like, crap, here we go. Now, mind you, I'm still a relatively new police officer and have not had a lot of experience in the realm of people not doing what I asked them to do. So he takes off. He goes around the corner. I call it off. He starts speeding away from me, takes an immediate right into the first street. I lose sight of him temporarily. I come around the corner, and there he is again, except this time he's not going fast. He's slowing down, but there's no brake lights on. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. So I get on the radio, and I call it off. I'm like, well, I got him again, and he's kind of slowing down in the roadway. Well, then he takes off again. Find out later that his car had actually died. But so he gets it started again. Boom, takes off again. Gets around the corner, cuts through a church parking lot. As I'm still following him, cuts through a church parking lot and ends up back on the main road. But because he was fleeing from me and because he didn't want to get caught, he didn't stop. And he ended up T-boning another car. Like literally, I heard the impact, boom, it was loud as hell, spun the other car around, then he tries to take off on foot. We end up catching him, go back to the car. There's two occupants. Thank goodness that they weren't injured severely, very light injuries. But I remember standing there shaking my head like, what just happened? Like, what did I get myself into? Like, here I am, a new cop trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Well, I'm in the middle of an intersection with two crashed cars, one suspect, and by the way, every higher up that you can imagine coming down to see what's going on. Needless to say, I got in trouble, but the good news is that when they reviewed everything, right, they reviewed the cameras, they reviewed the GPS in my car, they reviewed my radio traffic, like it was found that I hadn't violated anything, that I did everything right. In other words, that he had been completely at fault for everything that had happened. But why do I tell you this story? The reason I tell you this is not for me. The reason I tell you this is for this man, this suspect who was in this Mercedes. See, that night he decided to do something. He decided that he was going to go buy drugs. Now, personally, I know that drugs are another form of sedation. In fact, one of the most harmful forms of sedation. Regardless, he chose to go sedate. And so he went to this house where he was going to pick up his sedation mechanism, i.e., crack cocaine. So he picks up his drugs and he leaves. And then guess what? He gets caught. He didn't know it, but he knew it. He got caught. And instead of being willing to pay the price for his actions at that point, he chose to try and run away. He chose to try and get away from his actions. And what ended up happening? Well, he ended up injuring 2 other people, causing more damage. And instead of possibly just getting out with a summons, i.e. you need to go to court for these drugs that you have in your possession, he ends up going to jail on aggravated assault charges, fleeing from the police, and the drug charges. So multiple charges. What would drive a person to do this? See, we look at this man and we shake our head and we're like, wait a minute. You like me, you're like, you know what? If the police stop me, and I got to deal with whatever I got to deal with. Or so we say, right? But where is this showing up in our life? See, because there's always a price to pay. There's a price to pay for action, but there's also a price to pay for inaction. Now, this was a price to pay for an action. Let me give you an example of a price to pay for inaction from my personal life. If you've been listening to the podcast long enough, you know that I am full of life experience. Full of experiences, most of them caused by my action, but some by my inaction. One of those being my relationship with my wife. See, I talk about this frequently, right? But when you get married, there's no manual. There's nothing that says, hey, this is the way that you should be as a husband. This is the way you should be as a father. So you just kind of wing it. You just kind of try and figure it out. Well, the techniques that I had, the tools that I had at the time were not good techniques, were not good tools. And so what would happen? My wife would do something. I'd get pissed off. I'd get frustrated. I'd get angry. Sound familiar? And for me, the biggest thing that I did was instead of confront the situation and resolve it, right, so it wouldn't fester, so it wouldn't continue, I would create distance, i.e. I would leave, physically leave the location. Now, you would think on the inside, you're like, hey, that's a good idea. You should leave so you can diffuse, so you can settle down, so you can calm down. Well, not in my case, because I would check out physically, but then I would check out mentally for a much longer period of time. 2 days, 3 days, sometimes a week or more. Imagine being married to someone who literally shuts you out for a week period of time. Like you live in the same house, but you don't talk. You don't really eat together. You just kind of are roommates. Like, who gets married to be a roommate? Well, apparently I did. At least that's what I was, the behavior that I was exhibiting. So I would go through these periods of time where my wife and I would fight, and I'd get pissed off about something she did or didn't do. And instead of doing something about it, I would choose a path of inaction. I would just let it fester. I would just let it sit. And I would create this distance between the two of us. Well, what happens when you create that distance? Well, everything that you really want, i.e. to get laid, i.e. to have connection, i.e. to feel a part of something, is not there. And so I'd get frustrated and pissed off more at her for my inaction. Now, did this actually ultimately solve the problem? No, it did not. And so I continued down this path of expecting her to change. Meanwhile, I was standing by doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And what was the price that I had to pay? Well, the price that I paid ultimately was almost getting divorced. It was me leaving. It was me choosing to sedate with alcohol, with porn. It was me choosing to cheat on my wife. Like, it was me choosing to do these things. There was no one else. It was my choice of inaction in my relationship and action in another one. So there was a price to pay for me. A huge price. See, ask yourself right now in your life, where is this showing up? Where are you unwilling to take action Because listen, I guarantee you one thing. I guarantee you this. The excuses that you make today will engineer the disappointments of your tomorrow. The excuses that you make today will engineer the disappointments of your tomorrow, i.e., your inaction will manifest itself. There will be a price to pay. Everything that you achieve in life will be the result of action or inaction. Everything you achieve. The problem that we have is we think that by not doing something, there's a lesser price to pay. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There's actually a greater price to pay. See, we're all here on this earth. We all have the same tools. Sure, we might be born in a different environment, maybe a little more disadvantaged. Like, listen, I get it. I grew up in a small border town. We had the equivalent of food stamps growing up. I wore duct tape around my shoes going to school growing up because I grew out of them and we didn't have money for more shoes. Like, I get it. I get it. Quit using it as an excuse. Quit using your environment as an excuse. Quit using your current situation as an excuse. You got a deck of cards. It doesn't mean you fold the deck of cards. Play the hand that you got. And guess what? The more you play, as you discard a card, guess what you get to do? Draw another card. Improve your hand. Discard a card. Draw another card. Improve your hand. And so this process of action actually does what? It allows you to uncover those skills and abilities that you have inside that are just hiding there, that are just waiting dormant. So there's a price to pay. It could be opportunity. It could be love. It could be connection. It could be money. It doesn't matter. There's always a price to pay for action, and there's always a price to pay for inaction. The question is, which price are you going to pay? Which price are you going to pay? Listen, we got a lot of revamping going on. Like, this is end of the year stuff, and there's a lot of revamping. So I'm kind of revamping everything. This is my action, my big action item. I want to be able to deliver as much value as I can to you, the listener. I want to be able to help you get more out of your life. So we're coming up with some free stuff. It'll be deploying here shortly. Like, if you want more information, follow me on social media. Follow me on Instagram, on Facebook. Believe it or not, I'm on LinkedIn. Haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm there. But listen, follow me there because I'm going to start talking about it more there, about these things, and you're going to be able to engage with me more there. Soon we'll have our sites up and running. Things will be a lot more connected and I'll have a lot more meaning behind it. But listen, bottom line, take action in your life. Like, everything that I say means absolutely nothing if all it does is give you a pat on the back. If all it does is make you feel better, if you don't take action. So take the action that you know you need to take today. Don't wait for tomorrow, because there's always a price to pay. As always, my brothers and sisters, take care, and we'll see you on the next one.